don't mean to say anything, Mr. Silverman, but looking over the board here, maybe we're underestimating the intelligence of the American public.
You're fired.
Fired?
Yes, you'll never work at this network again.
All right, Mr. Silverman, Mr. Programming Genius. There's just one thing I'd like to say to you before I leave. Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime Project. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
Here now, the podcast.
This week, it's back to the early years. We're talking about Season 4, Episode 7 with host Walter Matthau. This show originally aired on December 2nd, 1978. Brad, we're back.
We are. We're back. Thank you, everybody, for indulging us for the last few weeks of SNL 50 hoopla with our anniversary specials and deep thoughts and brackets and everything else. We appreciate it, but we are back at what some might say we do best. Talking about 47-year-old shit.
Who are these people that say we do anything
there's
best?
There's like 6 people on Twitter who really dig us, dude. I'm telling you.
This episode has Walter Matthau as the host. So someone who is, he's an entrenched actor, like a real actor.
Is this not an odd pick to you in season 4? I'm just looking, like, if you look at the season so far and where everything plays,
right?
You know, Steve Martin, Buck Henry just had Carrie Fisher.
Right.
After this, you're going to get Eric Idle and Elliot Gould, Michael Palin, some stalwarts. Yep. I don't know. It just felt like a very odd choice, especially for this season 4 of the show being so hip, to throw Walter Matthau in now when he's like not pushing anything. Like there's nothing going on. It's like, how do you pick him now on the show? I just found it interesting.
No, I agree with you. And it's something that I actually thought, was he asking to do this? Is this something he was actually pushing for rather than the show?
I couldn't find anything that way. Like, I feel like if that was the case, you would have known about it, or he would have even said it in the monologue. Like, I've been wanting to do this show and I want, but
we'll get to the monologue. But yeah, no, I mean, to that point, right? Bad News Bears has already been out for a couple of years at this point.
Yeah.
My favorite Walter Matthau film has been out for 15 years at this point, Charade. Are you familiar with Charade?
Not well, no.
Cary Grant, Audrey Hepburn.
But to your point, he is established, and he mentioned this in his monologue.
Yes.
You know, he at this time is a 3-time Oscar nominee. He won in the 60s for The Fortune Cookie. He's been around, nominated for a bunch of Golden Globes. Like, he is a well-known entity at this point. He
is. So I'm agreeing with you. I think it is kind of an odd choice for this point in the show's life. And that's why I was like, is this something that he wanted? I didn't know. Because he has children who are in the show. And
we'll talk about it. How much does that play in?
That's exactly.
Now that you mentioned that, how much does that play in as that's why he's on the show?
That was what I kind of thought. That was the reasoning behind everything for me anyway. I don't know.
Good for him.
Yeah, it's good for his kids, really.
Charade is your favorite Walter Matthau movie or Walter Matthau performance?
Well, it's one of my favorite films.
Okay.
And he's great in that film. Yes.
Okay.
Is it my favorite? I don't know. Maybe it may be my favorite movie that Walter Matthau is in, because he's not the star of that film at all.
My favorite Matthau performance is another one, but he's not the star of, and it's much later than this, but I loved him in JFK.
Yes.
He's so good in JFK.
Oh, yeah.
The little cameo bit he has in JFK.
Yeah, because he's not in that much at all.
He's in one scene in the airplane. He's the guy who triggers Garrison to start the investigation. Anyway.
No, that's a good point. And I think it was interesting seeing him in this spot, doing these roles in this show, because it was kind of a disconnect from everything we've seen to this point in season 4.
Right.
Well, should we just get into it?
Yeah. The only thing I was really going to flag is I think in recent years, one of the things that came of note is that Jane Curtin has gone on record as saying he was one of the worst hosts she's ever dealt with.
Really?
Yeah. She was on, what do you call it? What's that Andy Cohen show? What's Happening? Watch What Happens Now. What's that show?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Watch What Happens Now.
I'm used to watching 47-year-old TV shows.
But a caller called in and asked her, who was the worst guest you had on the show? And she had said Walter Matthau, saying he had come in and wanting to play and not really realizing the show is so meticulously planned to the second, and was just kind of off the cuff and just felt very disrespected by it. It was interesting. Well, and so that gained a lot of tread. This is 5-6 years ago, people being like, "Oh, Walter Matthau is such a horrible person." I mean, you can't tell watching the episode, but
I mean, He did spend a lot of time kissing Gilda and Lorraine in this episode.
He went to the Buck Henry School of Hosting, of course.
Yes, apparently.
That's also the same interview, I should say, where I think they've talked about this, or people have talked about this in the past, but Jane admitted that at this point in the show, she was no longer talking to Lorne Michaels. They were not talking to each other.
Interesting.
She said, if Lorne wanted me to do something, he would go to Gilda and say, could you tell Jane to do this? And I would tell Gilda, sure. Blah, blah. So it's like we're in like the prime area of Jane and Lorne just not speaking to each other. I think we've touched on a couple times in the past, but it's she is, again, I came out and talked about it in the same interview.
Well, should we get into it?
Let's get into it.
All right. So the cold open starts once again with John as Fred Silverman.
Second time.
Yep. And Fred Silverman's going over the schedule at NBC and talking about how he had to cancel 9 shows. And Gilda's there as Barbara. I don't know who Barbara is.
I think it's his assistant.
Yep. And this is just them talking about bad shows, putting bad shows on NBC.
Right. Making fun of NBC.
Yeah. Such as David Cassidy, Man Undercover. Or they could have done Donny Osmond, Man Undercover. They were not partial.
It's just them making fun of him and NBC, which they started a couple episodes ago with the Zappa one. So
yeah, it was whatever. It was fine.
It was funny and quick.
It was very short.
Yeah,
and it was one of those that I think at the time it was probably made sense because people were aware of how bad the TV was on NBC.
They may not have known Fred Silverman, but they knew how bad NBC was.
Yeah.
Speaking of Fred Silverman programming, again, another behind the scenes thing is that I think it's around this time, roughly, where he had wanted Gilda to do a Carol Burnett type primetime variety show and was pushing for her to, as everyone's been doing their own things. Yeah. That was NBC's version of what Gilda should do and really wanted her to do it. Lorne produced it, and she said no. Like she and Lorne had said no. And that's, of course, what leads to in the Christmas break, they try to do the Gilda album, which then doesn't really succeed and leads to Gilda Live, the Broadway show. But so there is like a Gilda-centric Fred Silverman connection behind all this too.
Fred Silverman, also a big Gilda fan, it turns out.
I mean, how are you not?
Sure. Exactly. Gilda eventually is the one who says live from New York after she's fired by Fred Silverman. And then we go into the monologue. Walter Matthau gets a huge reaction.
First note, he does. The audience. Great response from the crowd. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I noticed he's got a lot of tissues in his hands.
Right.
I was like, what is this old man doing? That was honestly my first thought.
But it played because he's an old man.
Exactly.
So you bought that he had tissues in his pocket.
And then he sticks one up his nose and said, I made a $10 bet that I could get a laugh.
Which I think is a great joke because I don't know if you learned this when you were researching, like Walter Matthau had a huge gambling problem.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Like in the 60s had like a huge gambling problem. Continued into the 70s, it wasn't nearly as bad. And the fact that he's like, I bet $5 on the opening. And he said it so offhandedly and so slightly. Like, again, like if I wasn't looking up Walter Matthau, I would have known this. I'm guessing in the 70s, people knew that or was a little bit more well known. But the fact that he references it and it's delivered so well, so offhandedly.
Yeah.
I loved that joke. It didn't get the response you would think of, but like it was such a smart and funny joke.
That is funny. I didn't know it, but I did get a sense of his delivery and his timing in the monologue. And I thought it really worked. I think he was very good. Like, I just thought he delivered a good monologue. I don't think it was like a great monologue by any stretch, but he ends up talking about the cast and the crew and the disconnect because of the age difference between them.
He's given shout outs to Maureen Stapleton like twice.
I wrote that down too. I was like, why is he shouting out Maureen Stapleton?
I mean, she does come on to host later on.
Was she there that week?
She must have been.
Yeah.
Why would you blindly shout out to a non-existent Maureen Stapleton in the balcony?
Maybe he owed her money.
Maybe.
He ends the whole thing talking about, he's like, maybe he'll drop his pants. I didn't know if that was a reference to something else or if that was just him trying to get a laugh.
I don't know. Because the audience was genuinely upset he didn't do it.
Yeah.
But I do wonder that as well.
I thought it was an okay monologue. It wasn't a home run by any stretch, but I thought he did okay.
Yeah. You know what? It was rambling, but there was something about it that I was into it the whole time. Maybe because he's older and revered, kind of a Broderick Crawford-esque vibe where like, here's an old guy rambling, but like I watched it. I didn't tune out. I wasn't turned off by it.
I think he has some charisma that you can see in this, right? Like he's not a handsome man.
No.
But he's an engaging man, and as an actor, like he's on stage, and you want to be drawn in by him.
It was kind of Buck-esque, where like he was trying to be smart with the jokes, or the writers were being smart, and they were, but the audience just wasn't buying into it. Like if you listen to it, like they're smart jokes. What he was saying, commenting about the cast and him and the vibe of everything. It was funny, it just wasn't laugh out loud funny.
The audience is something that I think we will come back to later. For the reception he got when he came out in that monologue, I was expecting the audience to be far more engaged than I thought they were throughout the night.
Well, throughout the night, isn't? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the monologue. Then we move on to our first commercial, which is for Super Epoxy Dent. The old friend George Coe is back.
George Coe is back.
Yeah.
This is great. It's so silly.
Oh, it is. Awesome. It's hilarious. The whole thing is that Grandpa loses his teeth, and then they give him this super epoxy dent, and he hangs from a helicopter.
Yeah. He's at the table like Lorraine, Tom Davis, a handful of old people, some little girl, and You know what it reminded me of?
No.
Do you remember those old? I mean, they weren't old then, but those old super glue commercials or crazy glue,
where the guy's hanging.
Yes, on the I-beam, you put on a hard. I mean, I think they came out like 3 or 4 years after this.
Right.
But like that's what this reminded me of, was those crazy glue I-beam commercials.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Holding on and kicking his legs up.
That's right. Oh, those were funny, weird commercials.
Yeah. But this was really good. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was a good commercial, a good way to start the show. And then we go to Bad News Bees. So they're at camp. John's looking at a play bee, and then the whole...
And they're bees.
They're bees.
Yes. They're back. The first time we've seen them since early season 3.
Yeah, it has been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. The last time we really saw the bees was the Charles Grodin episode, Attack of the Killer Bees.
Oh, really?
Yeah. John showed up at the Robert Klein episode not that far after. Remember when he showed up as a bee before he got killed?
Yeah.
But the last like legit bee sketch we had was early season 3.
Wow. Yeah. So this is going back.
And this will be the last bee sketch we see.
Yeah. So John's looking at Play Bee. Which is funny.
I only laugh because you notice when they hand it around later on.
Yeah.
And there's like a legit full-on centerfold of someone in a bee.
Yes. I was going to say of a bee. Someone in a bee costume.
I think it's Lorraine. I actually rewound twice to try to figure it out. I think it's Lorraine. I couldn't, only by the hair, but no, there's like a full-on
right.
bee.
Yeah. It's a full bee centerfold.
Wow, look at her, great.
Look at the centerfold. Wow. Boy, I'd sure like to get into her honey sack.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, why do you know about that, Ellen?
As much as you do.
Oh, yeah, I bet you never even did it. I did too. Oh, yeah? Well, then tell me how you did it.
Okay, so he never did it.
I knew he was lying. I bet you never did it. Sure I did.
With who?
Laura Tench. Really? Yeah. One day a whole swarm of us gang-stanger behind a bowling alley.
Hey, what's going on here?
Nothing, Coach. We're just talking.
Come on. Lights out, guys. We got a big game tomorrow. Want you guys to get a lot of sleep, see? Come on. Come on. What is this? What is this stuff? What are you guys doing with this thing? Huh? Aren't you a little young to be looking there?
Aren't you a little bit old?
And then the lights go out and there's bed squeaking and the other campers accuse him of buzzing off, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yes.
And then Walter Matthau comes in.
He falls full into Buttermaker character.
Yeah.
He does a great job of going right into Buttermaker.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed this as a B sketch, and it was a really good way to tie in Bad News Bears, I thought.
Yeah, there's a lot of things with this. One, as you just said, very much like they did with Carrie Fisher. They get Bad News Bears out of the way. Right off the top. Here it is. This is what you know him for. Let's do the sketch. So that was nice. It is a great sketch. And I think part of it is, I believe one of the main writers of this was our buddy Zweeb. There's this book, and I'm using air quotes again, this thing called Backstage at Saturday Night Live that was written in 79 by a guy by the name of Michael McKenzie. But he was obviously there this week. So he writes about a lot of the rehearsals and stuff. And so there's a sequence he talks about of Aykroyd talking to Zweibel about the writing and some of the dialogue. Anyway, but I think that helps to it, that it's fresh. It's new. We haven't seen it in so long. And then, you get somebody like Zweibel who maybe not have written a lot of those B sketches in the past, puts a new voice to it. So that helps it as well. And the performances are all great. Like, it was great to see Bill as a B.
Right.
You don't really think of Bill Murray as a B. I think this is only the third time maybe he's been a B on the show, but it was just fun to see Bill. And Bill is fantastic in this sketch.
Yeah.
It's juvenile Bill Murray.
Yep.
There's shades of Todd in there.
I think there are more than shades of Todd. It's just, yeah, he's very good. It was a lot of fun. It was a fun watch.
This is such a well-written sketch. They do a great job talking about something without saying the actual words.
Yeah.
And I feel like they do this a lot on the show in the future. And I want to say this is the first time they've done this, though I'm probably wrong. I'm probably forgetting something. But where they're talking about masturbating and sex and all this stuff, but everything is about buzzing off and polishing this and like saying it without saying it. It all works. All the dialogue works. And you know exactly what they're saying. And it's so funny the way they write and say it. Like, well, you've never done it. You've never done it. And oh, we gang stanger back in the parking lot.
Gang stang, yes. Oh, boy.
It's so good. Put your stinger somewhere else. And, oh, I wasn't doing that. Oh, really? Then why is there honey all over the sheets? It's like, there's just so many great lines. I thought the ending was really funny, where the coach tells them a story about an athlete who used to buzz 4-6 times a day and just was in the World Series, like Reggie Jackson. And they're like, oh my God. And then he leaves and, it's like he walks out and the lights go off. And then you hear all the beds creaking.
Yeah.
It was a really fun sketch.
It was a lot of fun.
But thus ends our story of the bees. This is it.
That's a good way to go out.
It's strong. It's fun. It's a great sketch.
I just meant with the lights go out and all the beds squeaking. That's a good way to go out for the bees.
And we should say as we kind of mentioned, one of the two guys, when you watch, you're like, who the hell is that?
Oh, yeah.
One is Charlie Matthau.
That's right.
Walter's son. I don't know who the other one is. There's two dudes. I couldn't tell who they were. One I know is Charlie Matthau, the guy with the glasses but I don't know who the other guy was.
Yeah, I don't either. But I do know that we see most of the cast in the next sketch, if not everyone, at the Olympia Cafe.
I think they're all in there, yeah.
I think they are, right?
They usually are in these sketches.
So we're back at the Olympia Cafe. The impetus of this sketch really is that Walter Matthau comes in with Brian Doyle Murray as representatives from the Coca-Cola Company. And they eventually end up selling Bill, who doesn't understand English, the same setups as everything with the Olympia Cafe, to change over from Pepsi to Coke. I think I just pretty much explained the sketch to you much, much faster than the sketch itself was and felt.
Yeah, it's a little long.
That sketch was very long.
So it's interesting to me, the last time we saw this sketch, John was out of it for most of it.
Right.
The whole idea was John wasn't there. And so they kind of do the same thing in this sketch. John's in it very big and there's a problem in the bathroom and John leaves and they do much of the sketch without John again, which I was kind of surprised to see because I thought that didn't work well the last time we saw it. We missed John. But it actually works in this sketch. I thought it worked, him not being there. The one thing I didn't think worked that great was they pulled Dan out from behind the grill. And there's this kind of elongated dialogue of her not wanting to pay for two because she only ordered one. And
that's what it was.
Yeah. The Dan coming to her and talking was a bit long. It felt a bit too much like shoe leather. But I like how they continue to build this sketch and these characters new. Each time we see them is something new. It's based on the same tropes.
Yeah.
But every episode there's a different thing going on and they're still building and it's still a little bit new, which I really liked this time.
But what was new?
The whole premise of this sketch was Walter Matthau trying to turn them on to Coke and having them do Coke instead of Pepsi. And I thought that worked brilliant. His work on that cigar both in chompage and in
Yes.
smokage,
Yeah.
is impressive.
That was impressive.
This is a guy who's been around. He's there chewing and gnawing that cigar and puffing and blowing smoke.
You're right. You're right.
Oh, it was amazing. He reminded me of Phil Silvers. Walter Matthau, which about 4 people will get this reference. Walter Matthau in this sketch reminded me of vintage Phil Silvers, of like selling guys on shit they don't need.
Yeah.
Convincing them that what he's saying is gold.
Right.
With the glasses and the cigar, all I saw was Phil Silvers.
That's funny.
And I mean it as the highest compliment.
Yeah. The Walter Matthau part, I agree. I liked that. I just felt like the Jane part stretched this out too long. Like it didn't.
At times,
was
I get it.
unnecessary, and there was no big payoff.
The Jane payoff, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was fine. It just
I didn't mind it. There was enough else going on that I didn't mind. I know what you're saying.
like Gilda tells him she's getting married, and then he's like,
he gives her a bag of chips as a gift.
Right.
Yeah. It pushed it along enough. I don't know. I liked it enough because then they used Jane to get to the end where she's like, okay, fine, I'll have a Pepsi. He's like, no Pepsi, Coke.
Right.
And I thought that worked really well. It was a really smart
And then
way.
and then he beats Bill again.
Which again, and we bitched about this in the past where it's like Pepsi, Pepsi, Pepsi. Somehow, because they changed and it was Coke, I didn't mind it.
Okay.
I buy it. The impetus was Jane ordering the Pepsi. So you needed Jane there that whole time.
You didn't need her there the whole time. Anyone could have ordered a Pepsi
But
at that
no, but you're
point.
playing that role. I don't know. I
Yeah.
liked her being there. The first half of her with Dan bothered me. After that, her going back and forth with John, I thought worked fine.
Yeah.
It was fun to see their antagonistic relationship. I liked it. It was fine.
All right.
Saul's my bell.
Yeah.
I wanted to say surfs up as he walked in with the Coke.
I feel like we saw most of the cast.
Everybody-
and a lot of the
there's a lot
writers.
of people
I
in
guess we saw all of the cast and many of the writers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, what I love most about this is we've seen this again, and every time it's building, it's something new. They're always telling a new story. Yes, there's the same lines and
Right.
there's the same tropes, but I'm trying to think of another character or reoccurring sketch, at least of this period, that does that, where each one is different and it's building.
Well,
Coneheads
is
no.
building. I guess
I'm going to say
and it stopped.
without exemption, because the Coneheads, remember that Elliot Gould comes on
Yeah.
and it's literally a regurgitation.
Yes.
I appreciate how they keep building and it's getting different and new. And I got to, it's Don Novello. I think it's Don Novello's
true,
writing
yeah.
and how he is and what he is as a writer. I got to give him credit that they keep building upon it. Even the Buck Henry one, which I didn't love that much. It was
Right.
a different take. It was a different storyline with these characters.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I really appreciated it this time seeing it because we only see it, I think, one more time. We're almost done.
I guess so.
Yeah.
What we see for the first and I'm pretty sure only time is Walter Matthau in bed with Gilda and Bill in our next sketch.
You weren't at the after party.
I said we see.
Oh, we right,
see.
right.
I don't know what's going on. So Bill and Gilda are playing a married couple who are at Gilda's childhood home. And so she is in her bedroom, or they are in her bedroom in her childhood bed. And Walter Matthau comes in as Gilda's dad to say goodnight. And it just turns, it becomes this really odd.
I had that word, odd. Yep.
Awkward interaction wherein Walter is reminiscing about having Gilda at home as a little girl and all the things he used to do when she was going to sleep. And yeah. And it just got really weird because he wouldn't leave.
I wrote the word odd like 3 times.
Yeah.
It's kind of a slice of life sketch,
Sure.
but it gets weird, like
Yep.
weirder than normal, but
Yep.
it never kind of veers out of that slice of life lane. So I think that made it
Right.
even odder.
Yeah.
That they tried to straddle that line or, play both masters. I don't know. I see why they did it with this host. It
Sure.
makes sense with this particular host, this kind of a sketch. Guessing maybe this idea was floating around for a little while and they finally had a host to use it. But yeah, I don't have a lot of news because it's weird. It kind of bounced back and forth from slice of life to very odd, out of left field dad in the middle of this married couple's bed.
Yeah. And again, and this is where he starts, I mentioned this earlier. This is where he starts kissing Gilda. An odd number of times.
There were a couple moments where I was wondering, like, is that where this is going?
Right.
Like,
That's
a
what I
very
thought.
weird father-daughter thing, but it never did.
No. But Bill calls him out on how weird it is.
Yeah.
Like when he says something about Jack Benny, and then Bill's like, Jack Benny, that is weird.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very funny, and Bill's delivery was great.
I mean, I think there was one of two things. Either one, this sketch wasn't sure where it wanted to go.
Yes.
Or I just totally missed something.
No, I think it's the
Which
first,
it could have been.
the former.
Could have been either one. I'm not
then,
sure.
But even then, when Gilda leaves to go say goodnight to her mother because Walter Matthau has fallen asleep,
Mhm.
and then he wakes up and Bill's there, and he's like, why don't you go sleep with your wife and I'll sleep with mine? Right? Like that's,
and then nothing happens.
Exactly.
That's it's not the line. It's then nothing happens because there's this weird, and the tension builds. I will say the performances are all very good.
Very good.
Gilda's great. Walter Matthau's very good. Bill's very good.
Yeah.
So the performances are all good. So it ends with that line, why don't you go sleep with your wife? I'll sleep with mine.
Right.
Literally the last thing said, and then nothing happens.
Well, and that was where I was like, there was no payoff here.
Yes.
Because I was expecting something to happen there.
Anything.
Yep.
It was just anything to happen. That's what was very weird is it ended with that. And then there's like, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds. And then the lights fade out.
Right.
And it was a very, very odd ending to what I thought was a very odd sketch.
Yes, I agree. It was very strange. But that then takes us to Weekend Update.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, this was a very short Weekend Update.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. There was a Pope joke. Bill slipped into like Stargazer Bill
He
for
did
a little bit
more
there.
for the first time in a while.
Right?
Yeah.
Really, I didn't think there was much there from Bill and Jane in this Weekend Update before John comes on.
So they have the Harvey Milk joke, which they make reference to of his passing. And so behind the scenes, another thing. So this was, I think, with a week or very shortly after the Jim Jones cult murders, suicide that happened. And Tom Davis had pitched an idea that when they did this episode, the whole studio would be playing dead. His idea of commenting on that. And so he had pitched this idea, and I guess the network had come down and said, you guys cannot touch this. Do not talk about it. Do not mention it. So that idea went away. Apparently Walter Matthau also agreed with this. He didn't want to bring it up. He didn't want to touch upon it. Davis, I think, had also tried to write a Weekend Update piece. And to me, just knowing that, the Harvey Milk stuff kind of felt like an answer to that. Like, okay, we can't talk about that.
Interesting. Yeah.
We'll try to talk about this. But yeah, there's that, and then there's not much. There isn't much, really, like you said, until, well, Lorraine comes on and does this piece about, what is it, the Chinese New Year?
Yep.
But it's about the Harvey Milk of it all and being
Right.
like about, they're trying to make a lot of gay jokes.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it gets a lot of laughs. And I feel like the button of the joke where she says it's the Chinese New Year ushering in, ironically enough, the year of the fist.
Yeah.
Which I thought was like the joke.
Yeah.
That did not get the laughs.
Zero laughs.
Like all the other like little bullshitty jokes they made got huge laughs.
Right.
And that joke got nothing.
No.
I was kind of surprised.
Yeah,
Just
because
the way it was getting received.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
There was an interesting joke that Jane told about Mattel selling Nazi toys in West Germany.
Uh-huh.
And it was all to build up to the punchline of, I'm innocent, we're only filling orders.
Yep.
That literally got groans.
Yep.
There were groans from the audience for that.
Yeah, it was not a great Weekend Update.
You know what? They're taking swings. They have the Norfolk joke about you want to have kids but not have sex with your spouse and pronouncing Norfolk, and she spells it out to everybody. Like, they took swings. I got to give them credit. I don't think they hit for the audience.
And it was short. I mean, it was very short.
It was very short. And then they end with John. And
yeah. Well, I thought this was interesting because Michael O'Donoghue wrote the other ones, right?
Yeah, I had this note as well.
Yeah, and he's no longer on the show, so I was wondering who wrote this.
I was the same thing. I was wondering. He's done 2 this season.
Yeah,
without O'Donoghue, they haven't been that great. And I wonder who did write these with him because they're trying to like capture that same vibe. I want to say I'm guessing Zweibel, and I have no basis to say this other than I love Alan, and he had a lot of stuff to do with Weekend Update, and so I'm guessing maybe Zweibel jumped in on these.
Huh? Maybe. It's another piece that I thought it was longer than it needed to be, and it didn't pay off at the end for what it was, because all of it was like going, and it was a very slow ramp up to, but no.
I did actually laugh. I don't know why, but I did like the line. Back off, anchor person, okay?
Yeah, anchor person. Yeah, I wrote that down too. Yeah.
I did like that. But there's definitely like a change in the whole structure of it all.
Yeah. It does not seem as violent.
No.
Yeah, as it had. Which, sure, that makes
but
sense.
It's John. They're trying to highlight him. I get it.
Yeah. Well, that was Weekend Update. Short, not sweet, but short.
And I feel like this first half, this to me was another one. I feel we've talked about this a couple times. A tale of two episodes.
Yeah.
This first half I thought was pretty good. Some good sketches. You highlight Matthau pretty well. I liked it. I feel like we start to take a turn here, or we just start to get a little bit long in the tooth a little bit for the rest of the night.
I mean,
and maybe not having a musical act lends to that.
Oh,
it's throwing your normal balance of the show off.
Yes. Well, there are a few things here. Mm-hmm. With not having a musical guest, I think it does disrupt kind of the flow of the show that we're used to.
Sure.
But it also allows, maybe forces, some of these sketches to be longer than they really need to be, or in a perfect world would be. And I think the next sketch is a good example of one that goes on for far too long in many ways. And if we had a musical guest to fill those 3 or 4 minutes, it would have had to have been trimmed.
Yeah, or you're just getting less sketches. So it's hard to tell. But no, I do know what you're saying about this next sketch, because it's funny. There's a point where I'm like, oh, shit, this sketch is only halfway through. But I enjoyed the second half of the sketch more than I thought I would, more than the first half.
Yeah. Well, it's another Dick Nixon sketch.
Can't have enough of them.
No.
1975, baby. Oh, wait. Sorry.
Oh. So the sketch starts with Nixon writing to Senator Strom Thurmond, who...
What's the Strom? I missed that.
It was Senator Thurmond.
I like it.
Yeah, right? And the whole thing is that he's writing to repeal the 22nd Amendment to allow... it doesn't say Richard Nixon, but to allow a president to run for a third term. And then he's picking names out of the phone book, which
that was funny.
Pretty funny.
When he opens a book and just closes his eyes. Boom. Yes.
Eileen Foley. Yeah. Was the first name. But he's doing that a few times. Yeah. And then Matthau comes in as this character, Ernie, who basically was like the person behind everything. Like he talks about him not getting caught at Watergate and doing all of these other
not getting caught slipping a Quaalude in the drink in Chappaquiddick.
Yes, that's right.
That's going.
He then comes with bumper stickers to promote
Nixon's new campaign.
Yeah, Nixon's new campaign. The first bumper sticker that he brought out got zero reaction from the audience.
Well, it was like 25 words long.
But that was the joke, was that it was too long of a bumper sticker, but no one cared. Yeah, and then he's pulling out different bumper stickers. The new Dick was the one that they landed on.
Well, they pulled one out I really liked, Tan, Rested, and Ready.
Right.
And apparently that was used as like a mock campaign in 88. If you go online and look stuff up, you can find out like Nixon 88, Tan, Rested, and Ready. Like, it's funny. A thing. Like came about. Like I think they had him in the Smithsonian as like a part of a display about the history of politics. Anyway, that one I thought was funny. And then the new Dick. It's short, it's sweet, and it's what everybody wants to see.
Yeah. Which led to Jane coming in as Pat Nixon saying, "I don't think anyone wants to see it."
Jane was great.
So
that's like the first half of the sketch.
Yeah, right.
And then he's like, I'm going to call the family in. Because I made this note. I said, oh, no, he's going to call the family. That means we're only halfway through.
Right. Yeah.
And he does. Matthau leaves. And
Bill comes in as David. Gilda is Julie Nixon.
They love making fun of David Eisenhower almost as much fun as they love making fun of Nixon.
Oh, yeah.
They cannot pass up a David Eisenhower joke.
No.
Even still.
No, I know. I know. And Jane is Pat Nixon. And how great is Jane? She was wonderful.
This is it. This is your how great is Jane moment. She's so good.
Yeah.
I had to come all the way from upstairs. What is it?
Tell me, everybody, if you could wish the biggest wish for the Nixon household, what would it be? David, what would you wish for?
Gee, I would have to say a chocolate bar factory.
Great. That's really thinking big, David.
I don't know. Peace and happiness for all men?
Forget it. Pat, what would you wish for?
I just want to be left alone.
You're a real fireball, Pat. Okay, Julie. Come on, gal. Now, what would you wish for?
I'd wish that you could be elected president of the United States again.
Right, princess. I'm gonna run.
I need a drink.
But, Dad, the 22nd Amendment.
Amendments can be repealed, you know.
That's right, David. All we need is an act of Congress and 2/3 of the state legislatures.
I just don't want to see you subjected to the anguish of losing.
But I don't intend to lose, David. Here, look at this. I got a million slogans. Look at this one. The new dick. Isn't that nice? Short, sweet, and everybody wants to see it.
It's short and sweet, but I don't think everybody wants to see it.
If it were just the part with Walter Matthau as Ernie, that could have been a tight sketch. You didn't
not
need
that good.
second half. I didn't say good. I'm just saying tighter.
No, it's
because I don't think
tighter.
the second half added anything. Like I don't think you got Jane.
I'm going to argue. I think you got Jane doing Pat Nixon, which I think is the highlight of this sketch.
All right, so then we could just do the second half of the sketch and we can cut out the first half with Ernie.
Well, I noticed it later where I feel like Walter Matthau only had so much in the tank. And I don't mean that as far as stamina. I mean as far as being able to do sketch comedy.
Got it. Range.
Yeah, like you put him in a couple sketches, he's fine, but he only had a couple in him.
Yeah.
And I think the more we saw Walter Matthau in sketches, the less I enjoyed him in sketches. And I think it's the next one I see him and I really noticed it, but it's like he didn't fit. He just didn't fit in it. And so to your point, like, yes, you could have done a different intro with somebody else, maybe shorter, and then bring in the family and have the family unit be the sketch. Cause that was really good with, and Bill doing David Eisenhower. But I it's not that Jane was amazing. She was just the best part of the sketch.
Jane is always amazing. How dare you?
And she helped bring it to a really good close.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, to be fair, like you don't have that end if you don't have Walter Matthau bring in the bumper stickers of the new dick. So
you don't have to have someone bring in the bumper stickers. You could just have him there.
I mean, he's funny. It just, yeah.
Anyway,
I don't know.
Anyway, that's the new dick.
The new dick.
That takes us to Woman with host Connie Carson.
She's back.
Second
time.
What is her a professional woman
interviewing
women about being
a woman who talks to women about being a career, about talking to
career
women?
Woman. Crap.
Should have written that down.
Should have written that down. It's very long. And she is interviewing Lorraine this time, who is a model named Vanessa. And she's the woman that other women like to hate or love to hate.
Love to hate.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, it's another Connie Carson sketch.
Yeah, this one didn't work as well for me because it was too easy for Gilda's character to be better than Lorraine's character. Like she was superior to Lorraine. What worked in the first one is that Gilda had this aura of superiority that she was better off than Jane as the housewife. And so she kept trying to like show Jane that she was better.
Yeah.
And every answer Jane said kind of made Connie feel like shit.
But I thought that the same dynamic was kind of here this time. Not in that she was better, but in that Lorraine didn't care. She was like, yeah, I am the woman that other women like to hate. All of my friends are also the woman that other women like to hate.
Yeah.
Because we're models and we're whatever. Like I thought that was the bit.
It was. No,
but you liked it better. I liked Jane,
it. I guess I liked it better with Connie trying to one up Jane, and Jane always, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
Right.
That back and forth, I thought that back and forth played better than Connie trying to one up Lorraine and her being right. Like, yeah, you are better.
Right.
Like Lorraine is an inferior person than you. Conflict wasn't there as much, and that's why I liked the other one better.
Right.
Maybe it's just a taste thing.
Maybe. But this is what, the second time we've seen Connie Carson?
Yeah, second time. And we'll see it once more. Get ready.
Only once more, though.
B. Arthur, baby.
Well, I mean, I'm very excited for that show, to be honest.
But it was nice to see Lorraine featured. It was really nice to see Lorraine and to see her I did like her character. I may not have liked the sketch that much, but I liked the character Lorraine did. I liked that it wasn't Sherry or a variation of Sherry.
Right.
It was genuinely like a different new character you hadn't really seen Lorraine do, and I really liked that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know. The whole Connie Carson thing is not my cup of tea. That's all.
This is where I put my note after that last sketch. I said, it's almost like they realized too that the host couldn't do much in the way of sketches, and they already shot their load already with him. I think I enjoyed seeing something without Walter Matthau at this point.
Right. No, I get
It was
that.
like, okay, they realized, let's shake it up a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he's back right after this in a leather chair in a living room setting, making me think he's going to do something like Masterpiece Theater.
Right.
But instead, he's just bitching about music.
Bitch. Okay. I mean, you're not wrong, but I wouldn't say it that way. But I hear
How would you say it?
I don't know. You sound like me, for Christ's sake. Jesus.
I'm just saying. But no, he sounded like you, actually, not me. He sounded like you. Anyway, he's talking about, how he has this refined musical palette, essentially. Like, he likes classical music. And Lauren said, who do you want to have on the show? And he realized, like, no one that you could have on your show would meet my standards. So instead, he has Garrett come on and sing a concerto, or I guess an operetta, whatever, from, I think it was Beethoven. It's Beethoven.
No, it's Mozart.
It's Mozart?
He said Mozart. I want Mozart. I like Mozart. I'd like to hear some Mozart. Mozart.
Anyway, so Garrett comes on then with, here's the thing. With an 11-piece, this is where I got confused. But it's not an orchestra, Brad. I looked this up because I was like, is this an orchestra? It's certainly more than a quartet, like a string quartet.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, how many pieces do you need to constitute an orchestra? Do you know?
I'm not a stat guy.
16 instruments constitutes an orchestra.
So is this an ensemble?
I think it would be an ensemble.
You should edit this all out, by the way.
Why? Okay. It's something different.
Oh, it's different. All right.
Yeah. So the minimum for a Baroque suite for orchestra is 16. And this is only an 11 piece that Garrett is playing with or singing with here.
Yes.
And I think Garrett does a wonderful job with this.
Okay. This is hard to watch now. And I don't mean it in a performance thing.
Okay.
We all know now what this is.
Sure.
Everybody now watching this, 98% of us know that Garrett's going to come on and sing a legitimate opera tune.
Yep.
Watching it live that night, you have to expect a crawl to come. That's all they've ever done.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's funny. When I watched this, I started writing notes and I actually stopped and closed everything. And I'm like, I want to watch this as it would have happened. And I put everything away and just watched from the intro of just watching it, just to see how it felt, because that's all they ever did with him.
Right.
If Matthau would have stood on home base and introduced it, I think it would have had more of a, and I'm not knocking this piece at all, but it was like with Walter on a set, right?
Yeah.
It felt like they were setting something up, like a comedic piece.
Right.
But it's not. And we know that now. So we know we're going to watch Garrett sing a full song. But I feel like if you're watching this live that night or in the studio, like, you're waiting for the joke the whole time. Yeah. And I just wonder how you took it as an audience member, waiting, like, when's the joke? When's the joke?
Yeah,
when's the joke?
I get that.
And that's the only reason why I say it's hard to watch, is because we know what's happening. We know this is going to, it's gone down. There's no musical guest and Garrett sings opera. And
why was there no musical guest?
I don't think he wanted one. I think that was the point. So
that part was real. That was genuine.
Oh, that was, yeah. Garrett has been interviewed and he said Walter Matthau put it in his contract. And what he said, what music do you want? And he's like, I don't want the music you play on this show.
Right.
I would like opera. And so he put it in his contract. He wanted Garrett to sing uninterrupted. He wanted opera, not in a joke way, legitimately performed. And it's just weird because he's in that set. So again, like, he's in a set and you assume it's a sketch.
Yeah.
And so when he's saying all this stuff, you're not taking it for full value. But now you go back and look at it, what we know, like, it is all full value. That's what he wants. He wants to see this. He's very complimentary of Garrett when he introduces him.
It's true. He is.
Because he apparently is an opera fanatic.
Right.
This is what he loves. But so anyway, watching it as a musical performance, I think it's great. I don't like opera. I don't know opera.
Yeah.
But this is a great performance.
It is tremendous.
This is easily, am I wrong? Easily one of the best things Garrett does on the show.
Yeah, yes. I think we could say that about all of the pieces that Garrett sings.
But I'm saying because it's not a joke.
Yeah.
For Garrett specific, because it's not a joke at him or like, he's great. He is great in this. And I love they use the band. Howard Shore conducts it. Cheryl Hardwick's on piano, Blue Lou and a couple guys from the back. I love how they use the actual SNL band much of the band to support him in this.
As part of the Baroque suite.
Whatever it is.
I can't believe you don't want to, learn something new.
Really? You can't believe I don't want to learn something new.
I
Did the word new not flag it for you? Here's my question for you. Ready?
Okay, sure.
What's more ballsy? This or Sun Ra? Yeah, you wanted to say Sun Ra, and then
I did.
Yeah, and you're like, maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because Sun Ra was like a contemporary act.
Yeah.
He was a thing, like right?
But this is opera, not necessarily contemporary.
Right.
Sure.
On your comedy variety program in 1978.
I mean, to have Garrett Morris come out with a Baroque suite and sing
enough with the goddamn suite.
Don Giovanni by Mozart. Yeah.
It's ballsy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I agree with what you're saying now. I hadn't thought about this, him being on this set kind of does give you this weird illusion.
It gives you a false, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It's one of the ballsier things they do all season. Garrett doing straight opera.
Yep.
Give him credit.
Yeah. Well,
in a time when they're not, doing these kind of ballsy things.
Okay. So let's take this back a step further then.
Fine.
This is something that Walter Matthau insisted upon.
Sure.
So you want Walter Matthau that badly that you're going to do this? Or do they not really see it as totally ballsy?
Why can't it be both? Why can't you want Walter Matthau and also say, hey, here's something new we haven't done? Remember, I've talked about this before. Like, John used to bitch that you would have these, again, this is early in season 1 too. Right. You'd have horrible musical guests when you have cast who can sing. So I'm sure the cast was probably also let Garrett shine for 5 minutes.
Were they?
I don't. Why would you not?
Like, Garrett singing is on a different plane than John's.
They're all champions of each other.
You think still in season 4?
Oh, yeah. Of Garrett and Lorraine, yeah. They might not be fans
Garrett.
of John, like stepping out and taking the spotlight.
Right.
But I think they all would support Garrett and Lorraine and any of the. Oh, yes.
All right.
Yes. 100%.
Well, it was an excellent performance by Garrett with the Baroque suite.
And I like how they came back to Matthau at the end. Because it did actually show how much what it meant to him, how much he liked it. Like, I thought that was a very nice thing to come back to him and give validity to what they did as not being a joke, but like this was a serious thing we did.
Right. And he says, we'll be right back with the regular crap.
Yeah. It's a great joke. It's a great joke.
Yeah. It's funny. He's in the next sketch, which is the regular crap.
Garrett or Walter or both?
Walter.
Both,
yeah. Working at an army surplus store. Walter owns this store or is running it, and then Garrett works for him. And then we see...
Garrett is in good shape, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, he's wearing like tight pants, like a tight t-shirt. Like, Garrett is looking... I'm sorry. Garrett is looking fit.
What are you sorry for? It's whatever you're into, buddy. So Lorraine comes in, and she apparently bought canteens and wanted to make, Studio 54 purses, disco purses, right? Out of the canteens.
Mm-hmm. You can hear these disco purses, whatever the hell you call them. Like, he totally flubbed his line away.
Yeah. And Matthau just keeps saying to her, what are you, 11?
11? How old are you? Like 3 times. How old are you?
Yeah. And then... And she starts to get upset because her boyfriend, whatever. And this is where he starts kissing her now, as he did Gilda in an earlier sketch.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Right? This is very weird.
There's a great joke that I think no one will understand where she's crying. He's like, hey, you're crying on my invoices. And he takes them away. Like, no one understands the joke of water on an invoice with ink and getting them blurry. Like, it's like a total 1970s joke, but I loved it. He like takes the invoices and throws them away.
Right. And then we see Jane as an Eastern European lady looking for snow boots. That's what she's looking for.
This one. Yeah. Okay.
This one what?
You keep going.
And that's, and then I just...
Dan comes in.
Dan comes in as Bruno.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got totally distracted in this by the number of times that he was kissing Lorraine. And
wow, this really did bother you.
Because he kept
I barely
saying,
noticed it.
Are you 11? and then he kept kissing. It was just like the disconnect. But Dan comes in then as Bruno, and he's like a very effeminate character who is looking for something very specific that Walter Matthau essentially pawns him off on Garrett. Yeah. This was a I don't know what this sketch was.
It's a very interesting concept. It was a very interesting concept of Walter Matthau running a surplus store. And it gave you the chance to have some weird characters. Like you mentioned Jane. I don't know what the point of Jane was.
No.
She comes in asking for snow boots, right? It's like snow boots, snow boots, snow boots, snow boots, snow boots.
Yeah, and it's like black, 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 black,
blue,
red,
yeah.
blue, black, black, red, blue.
So I don't know what the point. I mean, it was fun to see her, but all right. You get to see Lorraine featured for the second time tonight, and Garrett in a really good role, which I was like, when was the last time, if ever, not ever, but when was the last time you saw the two of them featured prominently in a show?
Right.
I definitely noticed it in this sketch. Garrett's got a big role. Lorraine's got another featured bit after Woman to Woman. So it was nice to see that. And she, again, has another character that we kind of haven't seen before. And she does it really well. But it is another one. Like the longer this show goes on, it's like the less comfortable Matthau seems to fit into the idea of being a sketch performer. Like he just sticks out more and more. But I thought Dan was great and Garrett was really good with him at the end.
Yeah, I thought Dan and Garrett were good. It just, I don't know. It was fine. It was fine.
Funny note for this one in dress rehearsal, Walter Matthau, I believe was actually dressed in army fatigues in the
that
army surplus store.
A little bit more.
Yeah,
sure.
and the on-air version, he's wearing like pants and a sweater, whatever. He's more buttoned up, but in the dress rehearsal, he had fatigues. And Dan, one of the things you mentioned, Dan coming in as a feminine character, and he's got this little Santa snowman hat on, a winter hat. That was another addition. I don't think he had that in the dress rehearsal. I saw some pictures from the hat. The hat is a nice addition for Dan's character.
Yeah. I think the fatigues would have sold the surplus store more. It was hard to read that it was a surplus store at first.
Well, because he kept saying like, not retail. We don't do retail.
Right.
We don't do retail.
Right.
He had a great old man line where he picks up the phone at one point. He's like, hello, who?
Yeah.
No, I don't accept the charges, and hangs up. Like, again, another joke that doesn't translate today, but such a funny joke.
Even in the beginning when he's on the phone with someone and then Lorraine comes in, he's like, what? No, this is what we're going to do. All right, I got to go. And just hangs up, like doesn't wait for any reaction or anything, just whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, interesting sketch.
Yeah. And that then takes us to a repeat of the network battle of the T's and A's.
Yeah.
We saw this at the first show of the season, I think.
No. I don't know.
We saw it this season.
We've seen it before. Oh, yeah. It's definitely a repeat.
Yeah, it was whatever. And this is the point where I thought, they ran a little short, so they replayed the network battle of the T's and A's. And now we're going to get good nights.
I'm sorry, you're right. It was episode 1.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my headphones on. Can
you
say that again?
You were right. It was episode 1, Rolling Stones.
Oh.
Network battle T's and A's.
Thank you.
Episode 1.
I appreciate that.
I was wrong.
So I was right.
You were right. Make a note, guys, in the back. He was right. Okay. Moving on.
So I was surprised then that we didn't go to good nights.
Oh.
Because I thought surely like we ran a little short, throw in network battle of the T's and A's, and then we're going to go to good nights.
Right.
But instead we get another Mr. Bill show. Mr. Bill is late. And essentially it's just Sluggo killing Spot or training Spot. He's training Spot at first.
I get, yeah.
Right.
It's so short. Yes.
It's very short.
It's got to be the shortest Mr. Bill.
Probably. Yeah.
It's super, super short. Easily less than 2 minutes.
Oh, easily. Yeah. Definitely less than 2 minutes. And really hard to get a handle on what happened. And then all of a sudden it's over.
Yeah, it's over. They get a great response, though. You will say you get the Mr. Bill banner, and it is a big thing. But yeah, it's over before you know it.
Yeah, that's it.
It does seem, if anything, this is where we start to lay the groundwork, though, where Mr. Bill starts to realize Mr. Hand is not his friend.
Yes.
There's a couple lines where he's like, oh, no, you always do this to me. You're not. And it was funny where like Mr. Bill's late and they show like all the stacks of Play-Doh.
Right.
Oh, Mr. Bill. And he starts making Mr. Bill. But yeah, it's super quick.
Yeah. That was a good open, though, with all the Play-Doh.
It was funny.
Yeah. And then that takes us to good nights.
Yeah.
Where Walter Matthau has his arms around Gilda and Lorraine so he can kiss them both. And he does. No John at good nights.
I had that note too. Where's John? Because he literally had no reason not to be there. He hadn't done anything since Update.
Right.
And, again, there's none. I was looking at pictures. He was there in dress rehearsal. There's pictures of dress rehearsal for the closing of nights. He was there. So it's like, you know what? I think we asked this question earlier, but he is still filming 1941 at this point. In that book I mentioned, the backstage at Saturday Night Live, they talk about John didn't show up this week till Thursday, like in the middle of rehearsals Thursday night. He shows up from LA. And in Wired, there's a section in the book when talk about after this weekend, when he went back to LA, there was a big confrontation with Spielberg, with him and John and his drug use and being late and all those things. So maybe John's not in the best place right now. And so it finished Weekend Update at whatever, midnight, and nothing to do. So maybe that's why he's not there, unfortunately. So who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's our show. That's Walter Matthau hosting Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. So. I mean, I feel we get these sometimes. Like I said, I thought the first half was pretty good. It was fun into Update. And then it just kind of slowed after that.
Yeah.
Again, and I think the pace tempo did not help with Garrett coming in and singing opera late into the show. Didn't help with like keeping momentum and things going and feeling fresh. But at the same time, I mean, that might be the highlight of the episode. Garrett singing. It was just great to see. It was very nice to see.
Yeah, it's I always enjoy watching Garrett sing, but in a setting like this where he is featured and
legitimately featured.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That was nice.
We'll talk about it next week, I'm sure, but written for this week and rehearsed but not on was the famous Julia Child sketch, originally written for Walter Matthau, and he didn't want to do it. And then they passed it over to Dan. We'll talk about it next episode, but
he didn't want to do it because he didn't want to be Julia Child.
He called it, I believe, quote unquote, a cooking show bit. And that's why he didn't want to do it.
But it is a cooking show bit.
Well, Al Franken would disagree with you. Our friend Al Franken.
Yes.
That, and there was another sketch, something called Dormifix. Again, in that book, Backstage, the author talks about it, a sketch with Dan and John, Jane and Lorraine, that was in dress, didn't make it to air, and never showed up again. But we'll talk about Julia Child next episode.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Well, Brad, what are your best bits?
Got to go Bad News Bees. It's a great sketch. I think, again, if it was Zweibel doing a lot of the writing and a new voice, it helped. And it was a great merger of something in pop culture, maybe a little bit, predated pop culture, is a couple of years old, but Bad News Bears and the Bees coming together worked fantastic. And the Oxby Dent pre-tape.
Oh, the super epoxy dent.
It's probably one of, if not the best pre-tapes we've had this year. Commercial parodies this season so far.
Yep.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
They're my two. I picked those two.
Yeah, I went with Epoxy Dent.
Mm-hmm.
I think you talked me into Bad News Bees. I mean, you just said it. I'm going to pick the same two as you. It's boring, but there was not much else that really grabbed me.
And again, I wouldn't put Garrett singing as a best bit, but we at least have to, again, mention it and highlight it. Like, it is great to see.
It is.
Just in the context of the show in general.
Right. Next week, we'll be back with another episode of The Early Years. We'll be talking about Season 4, Episode 8 with host Eric Idle and musical guest Kate Bush.
A couple British people, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know what that means for us.
Sadly, I do.
Until then, good night and have a pleasant tomorrow. Thanks for listening to the Not Ready for Primetime Project. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please take a moment to rate and review the project wherever you find us. You can also drop us a line to let us know what you liked or didn't and what else you might like to hear in the future at nr4ptproject@gmail.com. And lastly, you can find us on social media everywhere at nr4ptproject. Thanks again for listening. Have a pleasant tomorrow.
It's called Baroque is the word you're looking for. Baroque.